Good evening and welcome to LegalTech Live. This is episode 92. I'm here tonight. I'm your host, Nick Rishwain, and I'm here tonight with our guest, Ken Jones. Ken is the Chief Technologist of Tanenbaum Keale, and he is a technology leader, frequent author and speaker with a diverse skill set. He's an energetic innovator, always open to discussing new technology and business opportunities and issues. Ken and I have been communicating for, it's got to be 6 months on LinkedIn, Ken. Sent me some articles from Legal Evolution that he's written, a great blog and some really in-depth stuff over there. Give us a little background on how your education, how you got into the legal field, how you became a chief technologist, and just tell us about you.
Sure thing, Nick. Well, thanks again for having me here. As you mentioned, I'm chief technologist for Tanenbaum Keale. I've been in the legal industry for 18 years. Prior to that, I worked in corporate America for Bristol Myers Squibb, where one of the clients I supported was the general counsel and corporate legal office, patents, trademarks, litigations, and so forth. So to answer your question, after my education at Rutgers University and moving through several jobs at Bristol, I began supporting legal. Then 18 years ago, I went to work for my current law firm. We've gone through some structural changes over the years, but essentially, we started launching a technology subsidiary called Xerdict. We have a product called Case Ensemble, which is a cloud-based case management, calendaring, document sort of tracking system, something that's designed for mass tort litigation and related needs, which we use to support our clients at Tanenbaum Keale. Also, as you mentioned, I serve as chief technologist for the firm, overseeing all the usual things, our infrastructure, our applications, how we use technology to service our clients, e-discovery, practice support, and so forth. We're a relatively small boutique firm with offices in Newark, New Jersey, Berwyn, Pennsylvania, and Seattle, Washington, a relatively small IT group. And so we rely on a network of different providers, service providers, application providers, infrastructure providers, and TK is a 100% cloud platform law firm. So my hope here today is
impressive.
So my hope here today is that we can sort of discuss, as you mentioned, how we look at providers and evaluate providers, and hopefully help the audience, understand from our perspective what's important to us.
Yeah, and I think that's great. Again, this is audience requested. What they wanted to hear is it's selling to law firms. We all know that we've got about 89 episodes with startup founders who have all complained about the legal sales cycle being long, and it's true. And tell us a little bit from the buying side how you assess a particular vendor.
Sure, absolutely. So I think we could focus on 2 or 3 key concepts to start, Nick and everybody.
Okay.
One is their alignment with our technical strategy. I mean, I mentioned we're a cloud-based firm, so we're very much into software as a service. Our document management system is in the cloud. We obviously use Office 365, and we're fairly heavily invested with Amazon, AWS, for infrastructure type needs, and we could discuss that more later. Sure. But one thing is that the technology is aligned with our needs. But probably the more important thing is really reliance on service, fit, and looking for companies that we can consider not just vendors but partners. It's our hope that we would be spending long periods of time with companies, and it'd be good fits, and ultimately that vendors who are supporting us with blocking and tackling infrastructure applications and so forth would be almost running on autopilot, that they'd have such good service and such good feel for our needs that would just sort of hum along. And in our world, ideally, we could use our valuable IT time to differentiate Tanenbaum Keale, to build applications for our clients, to expand and extend relationships, all of which is impossible if you're spending loads and loads of time on backups or breakdowns or keeping the lights on and so forth. So service and trustability and having vendors who we think we can consider our true long-term partners is very important to us. And I think part of that means that they have a true relationship and interrelationship with us and don't come across as too salesy.
Right.
We want them to understand our business and want to partner with us, and that's very important to us.
And it's a boutique business, so only boutique law firm. So you have kind of a primary practice that you're only going to need certain tools for that practice, I imagine.
I think that's fair. I think that's fair to say.
Okay.
As an example, we have we're hugely, of course, into Microsoft Azure and email and so forth. Huge investment into our DMS. We use iManage. A little less just in our law firm, work with e-discovery tools, but maybe a little bit more interest in things like AI and business process automation as we look to the future and ways to help differentiate the firm. Obviously, with the COVID-19 crisis, our clients, like every company in America, are looking to do more with less and are cost conscious, and anything we can do to demonstrate to our clients that we work highly productively and efficiently and they'll get the most bang for their buck with their legal spend and their technology spend is very important to the firm.
That's good. That's good. So what's interesting here, what I think the criteria different from another interview that we did recently, your criteria is, and this is not dissimilar for those of us in small business or small to medium business, there is a service component that you're really aware of because you're going to need that additional support that you don't have 20 people that you can put on it, right? If an issue arises.
Excellent point. We're a small firm. We have very high-end people within the IT group. I'm not just saying that. We have to. But so service is really important when there's outages or problems. We need them swiftly attended to. But really, the process of evaluating companies when you're structured like us, which is smaller IT group and more in the cloud and with different companies, it's ongoing. And that's a process I want to make very, very clear also. We're continually working with vendors, whether it's periodic vendor questionnaires, reviewing of operational procedures, taking a look at their backups and ensuring that they're working, and kind of that trust but verify sort of approach.
Sure.
All of that is very important. All that being said, one can't be too heavy-handed about it. They are professionals, and so you have to properly strike an appropriate balance between trusting them but confirming that they're providing the level of service in all those areas that's very important to you.
Yeah, that's interesting. So you have, it's interesting that the service is a priority. It also sounds like you might be slow to buy from a particular legal tech vendor because your idea, once you do that purchase, is that you're going to have a long-term relationship with this business. That would be that it seems to be one of your goals. Is that fair?
I think one of the fair criticisms of me is that I have very little patience and I'm not slow to do anything. But I think we would be prudent, and I think we would be comprehensive, and I think we dot all our I's and cross all our T's in terms of evaluating vendors before we move forward with them. That's for sure. And it's really, really important, like you said, when you're striving for long-term relationships, to make sure you have a good feel and a good fit with companies. And then that's on multiple dimensions. I mean, if it's a software company, obviously the software has to be easy to use and have the proper complexity and features for your clients and your internal clients, most notably. But the people and the service components and the fits also have to be important. Just one example that might be helpful to folks out there is that we personally strongly prefer companies that have vendor portals for service that provide us with visibility. In other words, companies that offer things like ServiceNow, whether we know it's ServiceNow or not, so we can enter tickets and be apprised of the status of them. Sometimes, Nick, a vendor thinks something's not that important and it's really important to us, or vice versa. And when you have visibility into service tickets and calls, it better enables that sort of two-way collaboration. And it's not dissimilar to our Xerdict product that allows our clients to have visibility to their cases and matters and calendar events. We strongly believe that it's great to provide collaboration and visibility to our clients, and we like to see that with the companies we work with also.
So transparency, essentially, as far as what's taking place when we're dealing with this problem. I want to know what's being done to assist us.
Very much so. Both problems and projects and new features and so forth. Yeah, I mean, both the good and the bad. It's just automated tools and products like that are great opportunities. So, a piece of advice I'd give to any startup company out there is not only should one have a great product that one can offer to the marketplace, but having the service component to your clients is also very important to us.
Excellent. So you also talked earlier about the relationship being very important. So how does we've got a lot of legal tech startups, that many guests who have been on the show, how do they start to build that relationship with you if they're trying to sell to your firm?
Well, there's a lot of ways, right? I mean, one that I know I do, and you alluded to, is demonstrating some thought leadership in the outside market, whether it's writing or speaking and so forth. I mean, everybody in the world can hire great salespeople or can give a good elevator pitch and so forth. But if you have a little body of work that's out there, then that sure doesn't hurt, right? Another great way is just like getting a new job, networking and relationships. Once you build a great relationship with client A, B, or C, ask them for referrals, ask for introductions. If I hear from a colleague that they had a great experience with a particular company or vendor, that means a lot to me, I mean, and so I don't think it's that much different for looking for a job or other things in life. Building relationships and demonstrating expertise, goes a long way.
Yeah, I want to thank our viewers. We've got Colin Levy here, Chris Conjero, Morris Lilienthal, Daniel Jaffe. We've got Jacob Field here in the Zoom room. If you have questions, our guest tonight is Ken Jones. Ken is the Chief Technologist at Tanenbaum Keale. So if you're selling to small and medium firms, get your questions in. We'll try and answer them live. So you definitely did the approach that it sounds like you believe with me, although we didn't settle until more recently on a topic that I would have you come on because I was focused on for so long on the startup side. But you would share with me, here's an article that I did for Legal Evolution. And you just did something for the Legal Executive Institute. So you are making your knowledge of technology for law firms. I guess we just had a quick outage of lighting there, so sorry about that. You're making your knowledge available to other law firms to show your thought leadership for your as a technologist at your firm. Would you recommend that startups and vendors do the same thing outside? Outside of their blogs and outside, should they be seeking those positions where they can speak about their knowledge of the particular tool that they're trying to sell or the solution that they're trying to provide?
I think it's very helpful. I mean, the more avenues, the better. Some people like to write, some people like to speak, some people like to read, some people like to talk on the phone. I mean, so if you can quote unquote get out there and make the time to do those types of activities, it could be helpful. I mean, you know, there are people you meet at conferences, not so much anymore, but you
We
know,
used to meet at
but,
conferences.
yeah, but I mean, for sure. I mean, the more you can get out there, and I think, and I discuss this at times with our marketing director, if you can put yourself out there in an educational perspective, if you can get third-party recommendations or comments about your product or service of yourself, those can lend even more credibility to your offering over and above what you can say about yourself, about your own expertise. But it all helps in different ways.
Do you conduct, when evaluating a vendor, can you tell us about your kind of due diligence process? When you, certainly you've mentioned word of mouth referral, that's huge. You know, you can't top a word of mouth from a trusted friend, but what is, or a trusted colleague, what is your due diligence if something has finally, all right, so this product or tool, this software solution has caught your interest, you think it would be valuable for your firm, what is your due diligence from there? Are you
Sure.
looking at founder? Or are you not concerned at founder at all? Or tell me that.
I think we're looking at many things, and just to compare it to something we spoke about briefly before the call went live, I mean, we and our family are redoing our kitchen, and so we're looking at different alternatives, refacing cabinets, replacing them, doing this, doing that, and so forth. And I think software sales and evaluation is quite similar. You want to look at feature sets. Of course, you look at price. One of the things I think is really important is to look at products with multiple levels of folks in the organization. So law firms, partners, associates, paralegals, and administrative staff all need to look at a product because they all use it differently. Mm-hmm. You know, the executives are looking at executive dashboards and things that look real cool, and worker bees are literally working with the system. And so if it has beautiful charts and graphs, but it's hard to work with, it's gonna be a failure. Mm-hmm. So you need to expose it to all different levels within the organization. So we covered price, we covered features, we discovered exposure. One thing we haven't covered yet, which of course is incredibly important, is security and compliance. One's clients often have many compliance requirements, audit logs, control perspectives, and increasingly things like where data is stored. That's a huge one. With GDPR, CCPA, the New York Shield Act, and other associated items, you know, working with the EU and so forth, you know, clients often will tell you where they want data stored, and it might not be where your offices are. And so things like AWS availability zones or any other company, and having the ability to put data someplace or put it out of someplace is very important. So, you know, just to sum up, I think, you know, price, features, exposure to different levels of the organization, and security. And then the other thing we talked about, which is kind of the ongoing vendor reviews, policies and procedures. We don't care too much about it, but others probably would care about ISO 27001 or 2 standards. And you know, pharmaceutical companies have standards. There's HIPAA standards. So everybody's a little bit different. It depends on the industries you serve. But I think clearly a comprehensive review and one that's structured and documented where you can look at different alternatives is worthwhile.
Right. Now, the next question would be, if you're reviewing a piece of software with, as you talked about, your internal audience, your lawyers and your support staff and administrators and so forth, how important is it to you that this software is available in their existing workflow? Have you had the software that's kind of just sits on the shelf because nobody used it? And
yeah, so we never have that. We're
really? That's fantastic.
We're a firm that we buy based on need, and almost, it just doesn't occur. I do know many law firms that do have it, but I will say this. We're frequently approached by companies in sort of the AI or business process reengineering sort of space. And in my opinion, if you don't integrate those tools within Outlook or iManage, the primary tools that we use at our firm, it's probably going to fail. I mean, so what I think your point is, which I think is an excellent point, is you want to be sure that products are seamlessly integrated into the work processes of your employees. And if they're kind of just standalone and out there, they run the risk of becoming shelfware, and something that people would never use.
You can tell that I don't have necessarily the tech background because I didn't use the word seamless integration. But yes, that's what I wanted it. I view it as it's a workflow issue. I need it in what I'm already doing. But yes, that was the terminology I was looking for. So the standalone products are difficult to get on board.
Unless there was some overwhelming, compelling need for a particular type of product. And I think, although we don't do a lot of it, I think e-discovery can fall into that category. If you have a large document production and collection and have a review, and a client or anybody wants you to use a certain product, of course you're going to use it, you're going to do it. It's not necessarily integrated into the things that you work with on a day-to-day basis, but it's supporting a direct client need, a current matter or a current project. So sure, it can work. It doesn't have to be integrated, but there really has to be something truly driving it to make it, to generate the demand for that particular product.
That's interesting. I like the way you couched that as overwhelmingly compelling for kind of a standalone product. Jacob Field asks in the Zoom room, and if you guys are, thank you to those who are watching, Chris and Daniel, if you guys have over on Facebook, please ask your questions. But Jacob asks, how do you weigh the benefit of a more efficient process against the loss of revenue from fewer billable hours for technology that is maybe increasing efficiency and lowering associate hours? It's a great question, Jacob. It's certainly one that a lot in legal tech think is an issue. This may be a little less of an issue for a boutique firm like yours, but maybe it is. How do you do that? An increase in efficiency, do you weigh that against potential for lower billable hours?
Well, part of that question is definitely above my pay grade as one who doesn't really run the firm per se, but very generally speaking, sure, that's a incredibly important consideration. Consider, for example, a project where one was looking to use AI to automate a function like an interrogatory or a contract or something like that, or to review releases, any common legal task. Projects that will improve efficiency and do what I spoke about at the outset of this podcast, work towards your clients' needs and requirements to work more productively and get more bang for your legal buck, in the short term can have the effect on billable hours that you described. That's probably, it's true in almost any field. In the manufacturing field, if you build up your line to make it more efficient and productive, you'll spend a lot of money to do it in the short term. But in the long term, you'll have a lower cost of goods sold. So it's, of course, it's a very important consideration. In my job, doing what I specifically do, it's my job to produce technology that helps people work more productively and efficiently, and it stays up and running, and people are getting their work done. And it's not something that I think about or worry about on a day-to-day basis, but I think it's a great question. And I think it's one that's very important in the legal field because it's transformative to the billing and revenue model.
But the argument could be made, though, that the more productive you are, just because you're more efficient, means the more work you can seek out. as well,
Oh, I
because
mean,
you're
without a
spending less
doubt.
time on one project means you can go after other cases, other matters.
with on multiple levels. I mean, it gives you more time per se to do more innovative breakthrough work that helps to differentiate your law firm. It gives relationships managers with clients opportunities to describe how efficient you've been. And, you know, if you happen to be in a line of work where, you know, you're doing the same thing for 7 different clients and you do something really well for client A, you could explain to client B, C, and D what we're doing and how we're doing it and how it's being beneficial, and then maybe extend or enhance your relationship with those other clients.
Yeah.
So, I mean, clearly it makes sense, you know, to work more productively and efficiently and drive inefficiencies out of the marketplace. But sure, I mean, you have to understand that and be able to appropriately frame it in legal as you would with many other industries.
Excellent. Now, this will just be a little bit of a change here for a second, because you do build products for in-house use, correct?
I mean, we build with our Xerdict subsidiary and Case Ensemble products that track and manage the large case portfolios for our clients, and they're used by us at Tanenbaum Keale, by local counsel, by our clients, and by business partners of our clients, such as insurers, auditors, other people in the company, experts, and so forth. So,
Okay.
so the tracking and managing of, say, a large case portfolio of 50,000 cases for a particular type of litigation is quite complex, and there's a lot of financial reporting associated with it, and depositions all over the place, and interrogatories and activities and case assessments. And so it's our belief, you know, that a sophisticated model that allows people to track information and generate reports and share the data live and collaboratively is of great value.
That's good. That's interesting to me. The reason I ask this is I have a follow-up that says that goes a little like this. Have you had somebody pitch you a particular product that you then later decided the way they were doing it did not work for you, so you had to create something in-house, is essentially where I was going with that. That you found this doesn't solve our problem. We need something similar, but it's not customized enough for us, so we're going to build it in-house.
So not so much from vendors suggesting products to us that we wanted to refine and improve and so forth, but frequently, Nick, clients coming to us and saying, well, we need to track our matters and our cases, but we just can't find products in the marketplace that do it exactly the way we want to do it. You know,
Okay.
One company's product is another company's brand, one company's facility is another company's site, one company's, you know, blog report is another this kind of report. And, you know, attorneys tend to care about terminology and want things presented and framed the way that they like to see it.
Sure.
And so the ability to customize, whether it's sophisticated features or even just nomenclature and fields and reports, is often attractive in this particular field. As I compare it perhaps to, say, accounting and finance, where, you know, a P&L statement or a balance sheet is relatively similar company to company to company. There's a little bit more variability and request and need for customization in this industry. At least that's my belief.
Yeah, that's a good point. Chris Conjero asks a good question. He's a former guest of the show, and he asks, how willing are you to take a chance on a startup company or a young product that may not have integration, DMS, for example, established or deep feature sets yet, but has promising product that has potential to solve business needs? Maybe they don't have that deep feature set or the integration that you're requesting.
I think we're quite willing to. At least I myself am. You know, we have the unique perspective of I'm acting as a chief technologist. I'm on the show today as a chief technologist for Tanenbaum Keale, but we also run a small software company.
Mm-hmm.
And so within the context of that company. We use things like Git, and we're not averse to things like Slack and IM and other types of ways of working that are a little bit different than that of your typical AmLaw 1 or 200 firm. And so sure, if we see something that is of interest and we think it's innovative, I'm not going to shy away from it just because it's not, I'm keeping up with the Joneses, no pun intended, within a law firm. If it, one has to assess people, and just like I said, with the comfort level and partners and so forth, but you also want to surround yourself with smart, innovative people who are doing things that are really helpful. And it doesn't matter if it's developers and technologists in your own team or folks that are providing services to you. If you truly believe that a product is breakthrough and will help you accomplish something that's important to you, of course I'd be willing to, and I do, recommend and accept them into consideration.
That's fantastic. And we have Kimberly Bennett joining us tonight. Hi, Kim. She is a former co-host. Oh, you may get looped in on that. I'm going to warn you while you're live. You may get asked to return as a co-host in the future. And Michael Whalen says that you're pretty. I think he's talking about me, but he may be talking about you. He's a good friend of the show. Thanks, Mike. I really appreciate that. Jacob, thank you for your question. Jacob said thank you for the answer and thank you for the question. I think that is a really great answer on how you're willing to maybe take a look at and maybe take a chance on a startup. You come from a little different perspective than maybe the AmLaw 100 or 200 because you're in a smaller company, but you've also got a bit of the entrepreneurial side of being the CEO of your subsidiary. So you have a little bit more of that developer entrepreneurial side, which probably helps you be a little more open-minded to those.
No, I think so. I mean, as an example, Nick, with some of our sort of core clients, doing matter management and case management and so forth, they will approach us with some unique needs at some point. Maybe I want to track all my legal costs from around the world with different subsidiaries. Maybe I want to build a workflow system to manage discovery requests. Maybe they have some certain type of calendaring or deadline management. And, when they come to us and they ask us to build solutions, and we do, and it's a good lesson for us to not just look at, the top vendors of the world, but to be willing to look across the spectrum of different folks. And as we all know, if you look at, say, Google and lots of other companies, a lot of their work and growth is organic, meaning they develop it, but also a lot of it are companies that they acquire. Google with YouTube and different types of entities that they've brought on board. So it's a combination of both. And in my former industry, when I worked at Bristol Myers Squibb, it was very much like that. I mean, some of the best products came from biotech, and small other companies where they acquired them. So I think the best possible approach is to look across the entire continuum for different types of companies to help you deliver value to your clients.
Yeah, that's excellent. In fact, the one person who is an illegal tech startup who was not overly surprised at how long the legal sales cycle was somebody who came from the healthcare industry. He was the one who was used to a longer sales cycle, so he was not particularly dissuaded, having come from pharmaceutical sales before they create.
Obviously, that industry has loads of compliance and
right.
Clinical trials, as we see with the vaccine,
right.
and all kinds of different considerations that require you to move in a cautious, methodical manner.
Yep, that's right. So what would your suggestions or advice be to our listeners are often former members or former guests of the show, and we have pretty large large base of developers and entrepreneurs. That's kind of been the focus of the show. What is your suggestion to them? Do you have any kind of top suggestions for selling to a law firm?
No, I do. I think my top suggestion would be something like this. When I worked at Bristol, I worked for the CIO, and he would always pound into us the fact that we need to have relatable, what he called elevator pitches to clients. We happen to have a 44-floor building, and you could be stuck on the elevator for a long time with somebody. And so my number one sort of suggestion would be that all of us as technologists, as developers, I suspect most of your startup folks are very ingrained and entrenched with their technology, and it's their product can probably do a lot of wonderful, amazing things, and they could talk about it for hours. But the pitch needs to be relatable to who they're selling to. And it's a fact of life that if you're selling to most law firm partners that they're not technologists, they may or may not be a little bit more seasoned. And you need to adjust to what's most important to them, and so I'm not one of them, but, my sense would be in today's environment, cost control, containment, keeping things afloat, helping your clients do what's most important to their companies, would be the types of things right now, today, in this environment that you want to try to stress in your sales efforts. This time next year, probably totally different. Hopefully we're over the crisis and people are back on the innovation and productivity, train, so to speak, and maybe you can adjust a little bit more to that. But it's very important, I think, to understand your customer and to tailor your efforts and your presentation to meet their needs. And if you can make that connection, you'll probably be more successful.
I like that. I guess the follow-up to that would be, what is one of the pitches or something that's really turned you off? And you don't have to, I don't expect you to name names, but has somebody tried to sell you something that was, they did it the wrong way? So some way to avoid making this mistake again.
Well, some of them would be claims that were so fantastical that they were just unbelievable. Okay. Yeah, so there has to be a certain amount of realism and humility in the pitch. You need to sometimes hear that a product doesn't do something, and so you can truly have a sense of what the product offers and what it doesn't offer, and you can develop that trust that I spoke about at the very beginning. So I think, like you mentioned, Nick, before, transparency, candor, humility, and at the same time, of course, balanced with expertise and so forth are helpful. And when you just come across as offering a product that's too good to be true, to me, that's a little bit of a turnoff, because it's you're positioning yourself for disappointment down the road.
Right. And do you prefer transparent pricing right on their website if they're selling something to you? Do you want that, or do you understand that it may be a customizable product and the prices may vary?
I prefer the former, and I also understand the latter.
But that's that's a good answer.
Yeah, but ultimately, as it relates to pricing, what I think is also very important is adopting your model to the extent you're able to the culture of your client. Some clients, like some law firms, not necessarily us, but a law firm like us, might want cost certainty. They might want to know exactly what it's going to cost. It's not going to cost anything more. Others might want per usage pricing. Like, we're not sure how much we're going to use it. If we use it a lot, we'll pay for it, but we don't necessarily know if we're going to use it a lot. So we don't want to lock into that fixed price for a long time. And everybody's different, and even in our firm, it's different on different types of projects and needs. So having the flexibility to adjust your pricing model to the unique individual needs or preferences of a law firm is important. And I guess finally, I mean, no comment on pricing would be complete without saying that, any opportunities, to, associate it with certain client work is also beneficial.
Okay.
So, but pricing is one of those things where it's not always going to be on a website. Everybody understands that. And having some flexibility in how it can be done to meet everybody's different needs is helpful.
That's good. That's good to know. And Chris Conjero thanked you for your earlier response. He thought that was very good. The final thing, because you have done some thought leadership pieces, let's turn to where you see. You've been in the legal field for 18 years as a technologist. What do you see that's on the cutting edge right now for legal technology?
Sure.
Is there,
So
or
that's
what
a
are you
pretty,
predicting?
That's a pretty easy one for me. Well, I think that there's many things on the cutting edge. There's so much work in AI and business process improvement and so forth. But to me, the huge opportunity is something I've written about a few different times, which is deploying legal applications out to the infrastructure of one's clients. And so I know we talked about this before, Nick, but if a corporate entity, and I used to work for a couple, is heavily into a certain technology. For example, Bristol, when I worked there, was implementing SAP around the world. Anything having to do with SAP was a project that people would be on board with, like virtually immediately. So they had something called Ariba, and Ariba was a bolt-on to SAP, and it took off like wildfire. So if you're working with a client who's heavily invested today, whatever it is, AWS, Salesforce, Oracle, whatever, Microsoft, and you can build out applications within their infrastructure, I think you will have a leg up. You will not need to be vetted. It's something that the CIO of a company would support. It's right within her or his, wheelhouse, so to speak. And so, Salesforce has a development engine called Lightning, and you can build products and put them out there in their infrastructure. Oracle has something called Visual Builder, where non-programmers can put together applications and put them out on their ecosystem. AWS will allow you to take your custom app and host it within their marketplace. So it's my opinion, and there's very little of that in legal. I mean, there's a few companies. There's Litify and AdvoLogix and Salesforce and a couple others, but not that much of it. And I think that's a big opportunity for all these companies that are looking to do things. You have competitors. I mean, you have Clio, who is looking to move applications into their own unique marketplace. And I think that's a good strategy. I would probably say I think it's a little less good than going on your client's architecture, but it's still a good strategy. And you have Renyon Court that's looking to Kubernetes and putting things in containers and rendering them to large law firms, and that's a good strategy too. So, but I think taking applications and porting them to different architectures, whether it's client architecture or their own architecture, is a next step in the next 3 to 5 years in or probably less, in legal technology.
All right. And Kim says, this has given me some ideas. Kim, let me know what you're thinking. I'll invest. She's a fascinating gal. So any last things that we didn't cover, Ken, that you'd like to cover either about what you're doing, what Tanenbaum Keale's doing, anything that we haven't covered that we should cover?
And maybe the one other item as it relates to vendor management and selecting applications and vendors and so forth is protecting your client's interests. So we talked a little bit about obviously backups and so forth. Security is also very, very important. So sometimes whether a vendor offers something called customer managed encryption keys, where either the vendor manages the key or you manage the key, can be very important. What that means to lay people is that if the vendor manages the encryption key and they get a subpoena, then they can turn over your client's information without your permission, and that can be undesirable. On the other hand, managing
undesirable is a good way to put that.
Yeah. On the other hand, managing the keys as a law firm can be complex, and another thing to do. So that's important. And we talked about it a little bit, but I think compliance is increasingly important. I think being able to store data in the different availability zones, complying with different regulations, making sure that you have audit trails and logs and all the things that are very deeply ingrained into the AWSs and Azures and Googles and so forth of the world are things that are just going to be increasingly important to this industry, and perhaps a driver towards porting more and more applications into the type of infrastructure that I described a few minutes ago.
Right.
So my hope, Nick, is that more and more folks in the legal field will see the value in the cloud, not just for software as a service, but also infrastructure as a service and so forth. It's clearly the way of the future. There's tremendous opportunities, I think, to gain more productivity and efficiency for law firms by getting their IT folks out of the business of blocking and tackling and plumbing and so forth, and into driving innovation. And that allows people like me to spend time developing things like Xerdict and Case Ensemble and value-added services for our clients or for our direct customers. So, it's hard to sum up a topic so broad quickly, but those are a couple of the thoughts that are items that I don't think we talked about earlier in the discussion.
No, that's why I do it as a conversation. The tangents are where we learn things. That's where we get into the good stuff. So I like to ask it fairly broadly. When you say, for my own clarification here, when you say infrastructure as a service, you're using that interchangeably with platform as a service?
No, I'm not. So platform as a service, I would define as building applications out with Salesforce and Oracle and having the platform host your application. Okay. Infrastructure as a service, I would define as porting certain types of services to companies like AWS. And one of the ones we do at TK, I think it's a great example and something I'd recommend to anyone who's listening, is we have remote desktops for our employees using something called an AWS workspace. So as we went to the COVID crisis, how would employees work remotely? They obviously have a computer at home, but they could connect to a Citrix server at a law firm. They might connect to the VPN, a Cisco VPN or whatever at the law firm. We don't do it that way. We build out virtual workstations at AWS for our employees to connect to. And so what is that better? Well, we think it is. We can give each employee like a performance desktop, a power desktop, what they need. We can vary it. Very easy to spin up, new desktops for new employees. And we think it's more secure. We're keeping traffic out of our on-prem network and directing it to AWS where we can control it. We can also control on those desktops that they're running antivirus and malware and Mimecast and different things like that. And when you have employees at home, harder to control. They could be working on a Windows 7 desktop that doesn't have antivirus, and everybody was scrambling, right? I mean, everybody was,
so they log in to a remote desktop, essentially, is what they're doing.
Yeah, you have an icon on your computer that connects you to your AWS desk workspace, and then that's the environment from which you work. So, I think that's it's not necessarily the topic of this presentation, but using infrastructure services at companies like AWS. Another great example for the audience might be Microsoft Intune. Intune is something you can use to register remote computers and to mandate that a remote computer uses, has antivirus and any other encrypted hard drive or anything else you wanted it to have before you permit it to connect to your company network. All of this infrastructure stuff, are services that I think the best of us, can leverage at the AWSs and Microsofts of the world to help our employees work more productively and securely.
Excellent. And we do have one last question on that. Sujesh asks, are there security risks with that? AWS admins having access to the desktop? Are there any security risks associated with those remote desktops?
Well, I mean, any vendor who supports your equipment could potentially present a security risk, right? I mean, if you worked with Cisco or Citrix or anyone else and they were remoting into your on-prem equipment, there's some element of risk. And I think that's where the vendor procedures and questionnaires and review process is vitally important. I mean, that you're ensuring that by reviewing a vendor's operating agreements. We're looking, for example, to move an element of Case Ensemble to the Oracle Cloud. Mm-hmm. So the Oracle Cloud has a cloud services agreement, and they talk like all these agreements too about employees and biometrics and how they're vetted and background checks and the 24/7 data center and blah 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 blah. So I think with any vendor, whether it's your managed service provider that supports your equipment, your help desk, AWS or anyone else, if there is risk, whether the AWS risk is greater or less than those other ones, my sense is it's about the same. I mean, any bad actor can hurt you no matter what the procedures are.
We literally just saw it with Twitter. Was it last week? I mean, if somebody inside the operation is compromised, that's, it can happen to anybody.
I choose to think / hope that the bigger the company with the more established procedures and management and so forth, the better off you might be. But I can't sit here in my heart of hearts and say with 100% certainty. I think there's risks with everything in life. And I mean that could be a risk.
But you feel it's certainly more secure than in your experience. This remote is more secure than what device is somebody using at home, and how compromised is that device?
Well, it's so much easier to see how the on-prem or former architectures could be highly problematic. Yeah. I mean, it's just, we haven't talked about it on this call, but, using things like data loss protection and iManage Threat Manager and things like that to monitor employees and what they're doing is another element of that protection multi-layer strategy. But one can imagine an engineer at a cloud platform company doing something, but it's way easier to manage an employee who's not an IT professional accidentally giving their password to somebody. So something like that might be compromised. Although I will say, we, like almost every law firm, use multi-factor authentication and other strategies to help, cut that off at the pass. But there's risks everywhere. It's just like healthcare. When you decide whether you want to take blood pressure medication or some other type of medication, you're managing risks. You're dealing with one problem and accepting the side effects of the medication. And I think in our field with IT, it's the same thing. You have to look at all the different risks and try to find the path that minimizes those risks.
Excellent. Ken, we've kept you longer than I told you we were going to keep you, and that's because the questions kept coming. Kim has to run, she said, but this was great, and she's going to catch the rest of the replay later. It looks like I don't want to keep you the rest of the night because I know it's late where you're at. I want to thank you. Can you tell people where to get in touch with you should they want to reach out?
Sure, of course. My email address is kjones@tktrial.com. And as Nick mentioned, I'm quite active on LinkedIn. And the firm's website is www.tktrial.com also. So everybody on this call is quite technical. They should be able to take it from there.
That's right. He is quite active on LinkedIn, and you find him at Kenneth Jones on LinkedIn, although I was instructed to call him Ken. Ken, thanks so much for this. Really appreciate the feedback, and I hope you will come back as a return guest to update us in the future about changes and potentially as a guest host one night.
It'd be my pleasure to do so. Thank you so much for the opportunity and to participate in this forum.
No, thanks so much. And don't disappear when we stop recording here. I'll give you a little update on how things go afterwards. Thank you, everybody. We will be back next Thursday, July 30th. So stay tuned for episode 93. We will see you then. Thanks, everybody, for watching. We appreciate you.